My name's Lori Friedman. You're at State of Play with Indivisible Marin out here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Great to see everybody today. I see a lot of familiar faces. Good to have everybody back, and welcome to all of you that are new to us. I'm going to start sharing my screen because I have some slides for today, and we will get started. All right. So State of Play, if you're just joining us, this is our election analysis and overview call that we've been doing in the months leading up to major elections for about 5 years now. This is our first one for the 2026 midterms. We'll repeat this call. I think we'll do another one in the middle of May and then probably monthly after that as we move towards the election. A little bit about our organization before we get started. We were founded as one of the original Indivisible chapters back in 2016 when Trump was first elected. Our founder, Susan Morgan, started this group in her living room with some friends, and almost 10 years later now, we've grown to over 12,000 members from all across the country. She's still with us as our director and our inspiration every day. She's here tonight to answer some questions, and I just want to personally thank her for her support of this call and all the work she does to bring all of you to it. Our mission is the same. It's taking action to create a more just, caring, and inclusive America. Over the years, our work has changed depending on our politics and what's needed. The national group gives a lot of leeway to chapters to work however they feel is going to be most impactful. Here in 2026, we see our work as covering 4 areas. We're very active in elections, especially at the national level. We live in a very blue county, in a very blue state, so we're free to work wherever we want and have worked in congressional, Senate races, special elections, and presidential races for the last 10 years or so. We also have a role with advocacy around issues, working with our elected officials to move the country, promoting it to be more government for and of the people. We work with our own elected officials. We work with people across the country to help establish those relationships with their elected officials. The last 2 years, of course, like everybody else, we're very engaged in resistance work, local organizing to support protests in our vulnerable communities. We have members of our steering committee that are pretty much focused on that. It is an incredibly important role for local groups to have now in their communities. Last, we do see a role for education. We are very dedicated towards bringing new people in, doing things for the first time, like writing a postcard or making a phone call. We also do calls like this that are just revolve around educating people around elections and also training people to either learn new outreach tactics with volunteers or to train them themselves, to train other people themselves. Our leadership teams fluctuated over the years. We have a steering committee of about 7 people, and I believe they're all here tonight. They'll be working in the chat. We have Susan is here. Andy Triolo is our texting lead. We have Joy Martin from Postcarding is here. Matt Schmidt is here. He's doing a lot of work around our local organizing. And I'm not sure if Veronica's here tonight, but she's also on our steering committee. Marianne Ross is here. She's works in our more administration and back end work, all very, very important. And I'm very grateful that they're here tonight to lend their support to the call. We also have other members of our leadership team that have worked in phone banks and postcarding that are here. And I thank them for being here also. Again, my name is Lori Friedman. I've been on the steering committee here since 2019, working in various ways. But tonight I'm here to talk about the election and the midterms. Our agenda is a repeating one. We'll be holding basically the same agenda every couple of months, updating people on various aspects of the election. We'll talk about the dynamics. We'll talk about where we are in this blue wave, looking at hard data that shows how we're progressing, and then I'll cover House races, the Senate, and some important state races. So to get started, I just want to cover a few midterm basics, sort of foundational things to know as we move through this election. Midterms are quite different than presidential elections. Minority parties have shown a very strong advantage. The most popular you are as a president is the day you're elected, and after that, it pretty much goes downhill from there. So that minority party almost always gains some ground in a midterm. And when you have the narrow margins that we have in the House this year, that gives us the opportunity to take it over. Another major difference that we're dealing with right now, it's very colorful, I think, this year especially, is the role of the primary election. In a presidential election, when you have nominating conventions, The primaries tend to be early in the year because we need everything settled early on.
Oh, this is Marin? I think
In a
this
year like this,
we do.
we'll see these primaries, not everywhere, but in most states, moved out more towards the summer. That gives us time for these robust elections where there's a lot of conversation and a lot of debate. It also gives us the opportunity to move the party in one direction or the other. There's an emphasis on midterms, there's an energy around them, the primaries, and that gives us that opportunity. There's a lot of talk in our party right now about moving younger and moving to the left, and this is the time that we can do it this year with these long primary seasons. It's also early, and I know a lot of people are saying, oh, it's not till November. Do we really need to start all this work right now? This is actually the most important time to be working because people, once they decide to vote for a party or for a candidate, they usually don't change their minds. So working early and taking advantage of everything that's going on right now, the worry, the concern, the fear that people have, having conversations with people now is going to benefit us in November. If we waited until the end of the summer, it would likely be too late. This is what Republicans did so well in 2024. They came in January and February when we were up in arms about the Biden ticket and moved in and never looked back. So although it seems early to be having these conversations, this is actually the most important time to be writing postcards and making phone calls and knocking on doors. This is when we're going to win people over. Take advantage of what's happening out there in the world and give people somebody to talk to. I want to say a little bit about the data sources that we'll be using this year. It does come from really hard data. There's a lot out there. It can be very overwhelming. It's not all good data. I use the Cook report almost exclusively for election projections. They are the gold standard. They are mostly behind a paywall, but I am behind that paywall so I can bring that information to you. And they rate races based on how competitive they are. They have a nearly 100% accuracy rate. Again, considered sort of the gold standard. They're also nonpartisan, which I appreciate. Their analysis is, I think, very spot on and sort of gets me out of my blue bubble. So we'll be using them quite a bit this year. We do use the polls. We all know how frustrating they've been over the years, but if you use them correctly, I think they can be very helpful. The timing of polls is very important, though. Primary polls that are done pre-primary are not helpful. They do not project and not have been found to be accurate at the end of the day. You've got to have two elected people that are going right at it, not these sort of possible matchups. So we don't look at them too much right now. As we get closer, the ones for the Senate are very helpful. House polling is not terribly reliable. They don't do it very often, and it usually doesn't work out. So in the House, we're sort of flying blind, which makes it more challenging, but the Senate polls can be helpful. We don't look so much, though, at the exact number because by definition, all of these races that we'll be looking at are very close. They're going to be won by 1 or 2 points. That's within the margin of error. So that absolute number doesn't really mean very much because it could actually be so far on either side. But the trends are very important. So if we have a candidate that we're following and we're seeing that they're gradually starting to move in our direction, we can believe that. It's just that absolute number at the end of the day could probably be 3 points higher or 3 or 4 points lower. And then lastly, right now, I know a lot of these polls look really good for us right now, but they all have a large undecided population in them. And that undecided vote is what we're going after right now. That's why it's so important to be doing the work because there's still about 20% of the population that has no idea how they're going to vote in November. We need to talk to them right now. We need to be working with them right now. As we get closer to the election day, that undecided vote will become very small. And those are the polls that we can really relate to and use. Some dynamics around the election that we'll be following. The landscape is, all that means is the electorate, what issues are resonating with people, how popular are our candidates, how popular is our party, how enthusiastic is our party. All of those things sort of fall into the landscape. Most of those things are actually not that useful. We were the most enthusiastic party in 2024, but we lost. And we can always vote for candidates that we don't like. We may not approve of a candidate. I may not approve of a Democratic candidate, but I'm still voting as a Democrat this year. So it's not that helpful as far as predicting how strong a position that we're in. There's one, however, that's very helpful, and it's called the generic poll. And that's a question where we ask voters, would you rather see a Democrat or a Republican in charge of Congress? That historically and statistically has been found to correlate with the popular vote and the congressional vote. So we will look at that. We will look at past elections and how we've done in the last couple of years. And we'll look at those ratings because the ratings are actually quite scientific that the Cook report does. They look at a mass amount of statistics, voter registration, past election performance, demographic changes, very, very detailed, very, very much sort of in the weeds to come up with their projections. And like I said, almost 100% accurate. So we will look at those. On the candidate side, we'll look at polls. We've already talked about that. We'll look at those ratings again to see how our candidates are doing. We'll look at fundraising. We use the FEC quarterly filings. They have to put their first one in at the end of this month. We'll be able to see how we're doing on financing. In general, there's a few things to know just going into the year. We're doing great with individual candidate fundraising. We usually do. Our base is very generous and they support their candidates. This will allow us to open good ground games and get off to a good start. Where we fall behind again this year is going to be at the super PAC level and at the party level. In 2024, we were historically high in these areas. We've never had such a good year as we had in 2024. We still lost. So it's not an exact correlation with what you do, but there's no way that we're going to be reaching those levels this year. Our donors simply have not come back to us for many reasons. They didn't, the return on their investment was not what they wanted last November. There's also some court cases that are coming up that are going to be dictating kind of a new relationship between super PACs and that dark money and candidates that I think everybody's waiting to see how that falls out. So likely we won't have the tremendous amount of cash that we had in 2024 to work wherever we wanted to. We're going to have to be more strategic, focus more on races that we know that we can win and not just spread our money out everywhere. Messaging is something we'll talk about. I think it's difficult for Democrats sometimes to talk about that and to figure out a cohesive message. We get very frustrated with the party why we don't have this national message. I think we're going to win on messaging this year because the Republicans have handed us a way to bring the two sides of our parties together. And that is the more working class group that votes on cost of living issues, and then people that are more what we would call the professional or the college educated group that votes much more so on democracy and social issues. That doesn't mean that these groups don't both appreciate both issues. They do, but they have a priority and they're willing to make some sacrifices in order to make sure their first priority is covered. And this is how we lost the working class. It's not that they didn't care about democracy and a lot of the issues that were motivating some Democrats, but they voted on cost of living. This year, you're already seeing a unique ability to bring those issues together. People like AOC and Bernie talking about you can't lower the cost of healthcare, you can't lower the cost of groceries and still spend billions of dollars on foreign wars and national police force. They're handing us that. I think we will win on that, and I think we will win all the way to November on it. But once we're there, we're still going to someday have to figure out messaging that is going to make people believe that we can make the quality of their life better. But I do think, and most I think strategists believe, that the anti-Trump, anti-chaos message is going to be very successful in just bringing us to November. Lastly, election security, that could be a call in and of itself. There's so much going on. For those of you that are interested in it, I think the Brennan Center is a great place to go for calls and information covering this topic. But basically, it is whack-a-mole right now. And there's so much difference in election security between local, state, national approaches. They're just throwing everything they can out there in every possible way, and it's just whack-a-mole, beating them down bit by bit. We did it in 2020, we did it in 2022, we did it again in 2024, and I think we'll do it again this year. But the secret to election security is turnout. If we have a big enough turnout, it's not going to matter what they do because we're going to be able to override whatever they can suppress. It's complicated, it's overwhelming, but most groups feel like we are bit by bit just beating it back each time they try something. What we saw in Texas last week was a classic example. They tried to suppress the vote. They did suppress the vote. But the Democratic turnout was so high in that election that it ended up not mattering. And they're still going to follow through and they're going to fix what went wrong, but the turnout that we can help create through our work is what's going to make this election secure. All right, let's just look at a little bit of data here just to show you what I was talking about. This is the generic poll, and this is what it looks like over time. This was really since the election in 2024, it was pretty flat. We were up a point or so, but that really doesn't mean much with a margin of error. It didn't start going up until the holidays. And that you can see the Republican numbers are basically the same. It's our numbers that went up, and that means that we're capturing that undecided vote that was sort of sitting flat all last year. About 10 to 15% of people just didn't know who they wanted to be in charge, and now they do. So this reflects the work that we're doing, talking to voters, and of course, I think the worsening situation across the country. This is election performance. I think we've all read about it, but here's the data. In 2018, we overperformed Hillary Clinton's role or numbers by about 10 points. We ended up winning the midterms, the popular congressional vote, by about 9, and we flipped the House. In 2022, compared to President Biden's election, we underperformed him in elections across the country after he was elected and, of course, lost the House. This year, we're already overperforming 13 points above Kamala's numbers in 2024. That's historically high. We haven't seen this high of a number in 30 years. So we are on par. And this is despite the fact that the Democratic Party is historically unpopular and we don't have a national leader and we don't have a national, and we're disappointed with our congressional situation. We're still overperforming at record levels. So you don't need to love your party or love your people to vote. People understand, I think, how important it is to turn their ballots in. This is a great illustration of what a wave election looks like. People ask me, well, are we going to have a blue wave? Well, we already have one. We're already in it. It's just a question of, can we keep it going? This is what the Cook report looks like. They simply list races by how competitive they are. If they're a solid for one party, likely, maybe leaning a little bit to a party, maybe like 5 to 10 points, or a toss-up, meaning that less than 5 points, less than 4 points, either party can win. This is what it looked like at the end of the election. The arrows show how many races have moved to our side in just the last 6 months. I've never seen it this strong before, but again, these are statistical numbers that have come up. This isn't a subjective situation. Not a single race has moved towards Republicans based on the landscape in our politics. This doesn't include those races that have been gerrymandered and redistricted, but those races just basically move from one solid column to the other. They don't really affect the overall numbers, and they have pretty much equaled each other out. This is just a blue wave. And this is the Senate race, obviously many less races, but you'll see the same thing. Not a single Republican race has become more secure for them, or has a single Democratic race become less secure for us. That's a blue wave. We're already in it. This list will change. It'll look different. Hopefully every time we come in, we'll see more blue arrows, but that's a lot for this early in the year. So what are our priorities? Our goal is to check executive power. We absolutely need to do that. It's really the chance that we have to save our democracy and to fight back against this authoritarian regime that we have in power. But we also are keeping an eye on that trifecta power that we want to get back in 2028. Our resources are limited this year. We're going to have to set some priorities. And as far as the electoral path, how easy it's going to be to regain control of a chamber, the House is simply much easier. We only need 3 seats to regain control, and we have 14 opportunities. We'll probably have more as the year goes on. The Senate, we would need 4 seats, but right now there's only 2 opportunities to pick up those races. That could change, but right now, clearly the priority is the House. We're going to need to do that and to focus on that. For every Senate race that we count, that we work in, it takes 10 times as much money and 10 times as many volunteers and resources. So for each Senate seat that we invest in, we're looking at leaving behind 10 House seats. We just can't afford to do that this year. One of the reasons is it's not going to be just enough to win the House. We have to win it big, because unfortunately some things are coming down the pipe for us that are not, they're going to be very challenging on the House side. So we want to build up the biggest margin that we can this year so that we can withstand what's coming and maintain control. So in the House, we need 218 votes, of course, to take control. The Republicans have that just right now, and we have 213. Each of us have 2 seats that are going to be filled easily, that have been vacated for either death or somebody moving on to a different job. But at the end of the day, in November, right now, as everything stands, we just need to pick up 3 seats. That's a very easy thing to do. We need to do more, but that should be winnable for us. People might ask, well, what about all this redistricting that's going on? Has it made a difference? Not really, because it's all canceled each other out. We have a major retirement from each party that's going to cancel out a seat there. We've had court-ordered changes in Utah and North Carolina that canceled each other out. And then we know the Texas map was countered by the California map and basically hasn't resulted in any new net seats for anyone. That was why we did what we did in California, was to keep things even. There's some sense that Texas may not be quite as secure as they thought they were because the Hispanic vote has left them. So they may not get those 3 to 5 seats, but on paper, it's evened out. But what's coming down the way? This isn't what it's going to look like in November. We have things to watch for over the next 6 months. In Florida, they're going to redistrict and gerrymander 4 to 5 seats for Republicans. That's going to happen in a special session they've called for in April. We're trying to do the same thing in Virginia through an election. That should cancel that out. And then there's 1 seat in Maryland that we may try to get, and another seat in Missouri that the Republicans are trying to, but those are now held up in the courts. So we don't really know how this is all going to find out, which ones are going to be successful and which ones aren't. But if everything goes according to plan, we should be still awash and still at those 3 seats. I think all Democrats would be very happy to just come in at the end of the day after all of this and still just need 3 seats. But we've got some things coming down the pike and that are going to be very challenging for us, and we need to build up a margin. So it's not going to be enough just to win 3 seats. We need to win all the seats. There's a Supreme Court case that is going to be decided sometime in the next 6 months. It's a Louisiana versus Calais, and it is going to take apart what's left of the Voting Rights Act and allow allow states to redistrict and break up all Black districts. This was something that came out of the Civil Rights Movement and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. They've been slowly tearing it apart ever since, and I think this will be the last remnants of it. They've signaled that they will vote with Republicans. The question is when it will come down. Once primaries have started, the Supreme Court usually does not have any ruling taking effect until the following election. So we're hoping for that. We've already had a couple of elections in the South, so it's highly unlikely that this will affect our election. We can keep our fingers crossed. But it is coming, and it doesn't mean that they're going to redistrict every single Black district in the South, but they're going to try quite a bit. We have some chances to catch up to that through some redistricting that's going to happen in Colorado and in Wisconsin, but all to be decided. And so we need to build that margin as much as we can, prioritize the House, build it as high as we can, take advantage of the fact that we'll probably not be in such a great position to do that in the near future. We're in a great position today. Some people might ask about the new census. It's likely that the blue states are going to lose a few seats after the 2030 census because places like California have shrunk, places like Texas have grown. So lots to think about in the future. The point is right now, let's win as many as we can to protect ourselves and keep power once we get it. So where are these races for this year? I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see how many red ones there are. These are the toss-up races. These are the ones that are statistically tied that will decide who controls the House after November. We only have 4 to worry about. Right now, the Republicans have 14. That is a huge difference. The pressure is definitely on them. If we do this, we will be at 11 seats up. That's a pretty great position to be in, fighting back against the Trump administration. The Senate is a little different. We have 47 seats right now. Republicans have 53. We would have to pick up 4 seats in order to take over. That's unlikely, but at this point, it's too early to say for sure. One of the bigger challenges is before we even get to the flips, we have to hold a very challenging seat in Georgia with Jon Ossoff and an open seat in Michigan. Our Senator Gary Peters is resigning. I'm not going to go through the details of all of these. They both are pending primaries. If we can hold on to these, then we have some opportunities. North Carolina is our best one. I think everyone pretty much feels that Roy Cooper will pick up a seat for us. He's probably the best candidate we're running across the country this year. He's a former very popular governor there, running against the former head of the RNC. This primary was last week, so this is the one that's set right now. We know this is happening. First polls show him up by quite a large margin, and this looks like something we will be able to pick up. The only other one that's in range for us right now is Maine, and that's Susan Collins, one of my least favorite politicians, who always somehow manages to get reelected no matter what. And she's trying again this year. This is a difficult race to assess. Maine is an unusual state. We have the governor running for us, Janet Mills, who's very popular, but she's 79 years old, running for a seat next to a young former military, now he's a farmer there, very progressive, young outsider candidate. Great primary. It's not until June. We'll follow that one. I think it really depends on who wins that one. I don't think anybody wants to see two women in their 70s running an election against each other. And Plattner is looking very strong in initial polling and fundraising. So that'll be a fun one to watch, but we won't know till the summer. And after that, it gets pretty much wishful thinking. Mary Peltola in Alaska, Sherrod Brown running again in Ohio, and then of course James Tallarico, who won his race on his primary in Texas. This is just a bit too early to be able to predict. None of these races are being listed right now as highly competitive. That could change. The Texas one, of course, will depend on whether or not he's going to be running against the MAGA Ken Paxton or the incumbent John Cronin. So we'll be following these all year, but for now, the priority for looking in the Senate is supporting Jon Ossoff and now being able to work for Roy Cooper. On the state side, we don't spend a lot of time looking at state races, but state power is so important right now because these states are working together against the Trump administration. It's so important for election security. There's a mass of them. We won't go through all of them today, but basically they kind of fall into three areas. That triplex is really important right now because that is holding the governor, the attorney general, and the secretary of state. And this is so important for election security. If you don't have these three offices, it's really difficult to fight back against election interference. We're in fairly good shape. We already own this triplex in Arizona and Maine and Michigan, which are three of the major states. We'd like to pick up that governor seat in Nevada, and that would give us that state also. But actually we're in pretty decent shape across the country, being able to run all three of those in the major states. Trifectas mean that we have the governor and both chambers of their Congress. We've done pretty good work there over the years, gaining more and more states, making them blue, but we lost a lot of ground in 2024. Most of these states that are listed at Nevada, Arizona, we had control and we lost it. So we'd like to see all of these states return. And usually it's just one race or two in a state house or a Senate that we're down by. So it's all winnable, but you'll see these states working very hard to regain that sort of trifecta power that we have. Governor races are always interesting. Josh Shapiro will win easily in Pennsylvania. Tony Evers is finally retiring in Wisconsin. And then, of course, we have Democratic governors in Kansas and Kentucky that are both terming out, and those are open seats, and then one in Vermont. And then, of course, our race in California. Ultimately, it won't be competitive, but it's very, very fun and very entertaining right now. And we'll be talking a little bit about that since I know many of you are from here. All right, before we end for questions, I want to touch a bit on voter outreach and why it's so incredibly important right now to start working. What works, what we've learned works for us, and what we saw work for Republicans is early, regular, and broad voter contact, meaning starting early in the year, continuing to contact these voters over and over again with a variety of contacts, meaning knocks on the door, phone calls, postcards, active campaigning by the candidate. If you have all of that, we should win. And we saw this happen in California. We did this in 2024. We were one of the only states in the country that were talking to voters in January and February. And in an off year for Democrats, we flipped three seats. We flipped 3 seats in California, in Republican heavy areas, and held on to a fourth that was very tenuous. We know it works. We have the statistics to show it. We're doing it again, and we're seeing this work sort of spreading across the country. So we have lots of opportunities with us and, with other groups in your area to get started, but this isn't an election where we wait until September to start working. The election's going to be won in the next couple of months, depending on which party is able to connect with the voters in these very stressful and really terrifying times. We look at election work in 3 different areas. We're right in the winter season right now. For us personally, our organization, Indivisible Marin, we are going to be focusing on the Virginia special election for the next month and a half or so, taking a break from some of our California work, because we recognize how important it is to get those seats back, to be able to counter what they're going to do in Florida. We went through this ourselves here in last fall with our Proposition 50. We know the work, we know how to do it. So we're going to be focused on that. Joy will be writing postcards for them and her events. We'll be doing this online, and we have daily phone banks that you can sign up for on our website for the special election. We haven't lost sight of California, though. We are still doing that deep canvassing, early conversations. We have weekly phone banks there, and we'll be returning to that work with postcarding as soon as the election is over in Virginia. Any races during the winter months and early spring that are post-primary, we will also be working in. We'll be adding a campaign for Roy Cooper to our postcarding in the next couple of weeks, probably, because that is the one race now that is post-primary. We don't get involved in primaries. We don't advocate for one Democrat over another. We wait until they're done, and then we support whoever that local district or state elects. Once we get into the spring and the summer, we'll start passing the primaries. Elections will be set, and we will work going towards specific candidate support. We will be working in North Carolina, and then in those Senate races, Georgia, Maine, and Michigan as they come online. Georgia's in May, Maine is in June, and Michigan is not until August. So staggered work across the summer. In the House, we do recommend that all groups work close to home. That's how we distribute ourselves evenly across the country. We have 4 races here in California that we'll be focused on. For those of you that are familiar, that would be Adam Gray in 13, Derek Tran down in 45, that's near Southern California, and then who's ever elected in 22 and in 48. These are our 4 targeted races in California. And then in the fall, we'll move to that familiar get out the vote. How are you planning on voting? Have you voted yet? Have you made a vote plan? And checking people off as they get closer to the election. All right, a few upcoming events, just to get everybody backed into that election work. If you're here in Marin, Joy's postcarding every Tuesday at 10 a.m. at Panera in Novato. We'll be working for Virginia and then moving into either Roy Cooper or some congressional work after that. That would be like in late April. And then we have a lot of virtual work that people can get involved with wherever. We have online postcarding too that you can sign up for on our website, but our virtual events, we are partnering with the BAC, which is the Bay Area Coalition, to do phone banking into California congressional districts. We will be every Thursday night at 5:30. I'm doing these myself. They're wonderful conversations to have. You cannot get people off the phone. They are so happy to talk to someone and let you know how they're feeling about what's happening to the country. We'll be holding these all the way through Election Day. And then we have a lot of introductory calls, trainings that we do. If you're new to postcarding, I would recommend that you come to the intro to postcarding calls, calling your representatives. If you are nervous or have never made those phone calls and started putting some pressure on them for their votes or thanking them if they're voting the way you want to, but we have a great introductory workshop. It's coming up on April 1st. It's about 45 minutes. You'll actually listen to us call our own reps live on the phone, so you know exactly what it's like. We have an app that we train people on. It's really simple and has been very popular. We have introduction to phone banking at the end of April for those of you that are new to phone banking. And then if you're just want to hear about all of these activities in a little bit of a lighter way without specifically getting into one, you want to hear about all of them, come to our volunteer orientation. We'll also be talking about protest work, how to arrange those, how to get involved in protest work across the country. So that is it for me. I am happy to take some questions. And
Yeah, Lori, there's a lot of great questions. I
oh,
can
good.
serve them up to you. Um, we have quite a number, so it doesn't need to be like a rapid fire, but we should move through them a bit quickly. Um, but before we do, I just want to make a little bit of have a little bit of a soapbox moment. I'm Susan Morgan. I'm the founder and director. And every year, every election year, when we're at about this time of the year, and it's spring, and people, are busy with other stuff, and there's so much now in the chaos of Trump for us to be doing and fighting and resisting and protesting. Just want to really underscore that getting started with voter outreach work now, all of us, is vital because there has been, research and statistics back up that within the low propensity voters, the people, many people don't vote in the midterms that might vote in a primary. So, in that less likely to vote demographic, if we can get them engaged and then they vote in the primary, they have a much higher chance. We have a much higher chance that they'll vote in the general. So let's not think we have a lot of time and don't need to get started, as Lori said, till September. And the other thing I want to say is about phone banking. I talk to so many people, like so many of you have been at this for, some people decades, right? And I hear from a lot of people, I don't phone bank. I tried that. It's just, it's just not for me. And then I'll say, oh, I'm sorry you had that experience. When did you last phone bank? And I was like, oh, for Obama, oh, for Hillary or something. And the reality is the technology of phone banking has changed dramatically, making it such that it's like a telemarketer kind of a platform. So you get patched through to people. You're not just dialing and ringing and dialing and ringing. And the other thing people say is, I don't like getting phone calls. I don't want to do that to other people. Well, we're not the average person. There are a lot of people around our country, seniors, people that live in rural areas, even young people who are, you know, just kind of confused. And they actually do like to hear from us. And again, as Lori said, there we do have substantive, interactive phone conversations, and the interaction is key. Postcarding's fabulous, but the interaction is key. And phone banking is the most efficient way to have interpersonal, interactive conversations. So if you haven't tried it, please try it. Come to our intro to phone banking. If you have tried it and didn't like it, please come to our intro to phone banking, give it another whirl. Okay, now I will stop preaching and go to the questions. The first one, Lori, I think you covered, but maybe just so you could do a quick recap on the California congressional races post redistricting, and which are the most competitive. Where are they? Who are the candidates?
That's a great one. We could do a whole call just on California. So to catch people up who are not from California, we've usually had about 10 competitive races in California out of our 52 that we've worked in for years. So Proposition 50 came about. The whole point of that was to make these more secure for us. So it's a completely different world in California this year because of that proposition. It's going to make us much more targeted. So races like George Whiteside's race, Adam Gray, Josh Harder, people like that, Derek Tran, those races got more blue. Those districts got more blue. So they are not as big of a priority for us as they've been in the year. The priority is really only 2 toss-up races down from 10. That's a huge, huge change for us. That's David Valadeo's district that we're trying to flip, and California 48, that's a new district that's become competitive because of the new boundaries. That was Daryl Isa's district. He has opted, as of 2 days ago, to not run. So that's going to be a wide open seat. We have competitive primaries in both 48 and 22, multiple candidates running. This is a great thing for California. This is a great thing for the district. There's many people. I won't go through all of them, but we've got a progressive and a moderate and people in between running in all of those. So we're going to wait and see who those districts elect on their own. Whichever the candidate is, we will work with them. And it's impossible to say they're all going to be very, very close. So just the four. We'll still be doing some work for Derek Tran and for Adam Gray, even though their races are not considered toss-ups this year, because we know the Central Valley, we know how tough it is. It doesn't really play to their statistics. So a lot of us are still going to be doing heavy work for Gray throughout the year to make sure that those seats get held. But many of those familiar names now are pretty comfortable. And then what they did is they took like Will Rollins' district, they took Doug LaMalfa's district, another district up in Northern California, and they made them completely blue. So they're new to being blue, but we don't need to work in them because they're so secure. So we'll still be in that familiar Central Valley, sort of east of Los Angeles area, but with new candidates. And one thing I want to say, this is a great opportunity to say it, when I said we don't get involved in primaries and we will support the candidate, whoever it is that wins. This can be a little bit difficult for those of us, like me, that's very progressive, to go and work then in a general election for a candidate that is very moderate. But the candidate that a local population elects will be the strongest general election candidate. Not all of them are going to be progressive. Hopefully we won't see like a Fetterman type of a situation, but we will see people like Ruben Gallego, who we love and did so much work for, take some votes that make us uncomfortable, but for their district and their population, it was the right thing to do in order to keep them in office. So for that reason, we don't try to put our fingers on the scale and make every district move to the left. We'll only do that in areas where we know we're going to win. In the purple districts, we'll support whoever is elected there, whoever those voters elect, regardless of how progressive or conservative they are as a Democrat.
Great. Well, thanks, Lori. I'm going to speed you along a teeny bit. So relatedly, a question is that Indy National is suggesting focusing on primaries to get really strong Dem candidates in deep blue districts. Do you agree?
Absolutely, but only in the districts that are deeply, deeply blue. We don't have any of those. I don't think we're even on the list in California because we don't have that kind of challenging situation. I think they're looking at about 7 or 8 districts across the country that are, they're going to be blue no matter what, with somebody who either is very old, very sick. We had 3 Democratic Congress people die this year because they ran an election in 2024 and they were terminally ill. So we don't want to have that kind of a repeat where we're going months and months without someone. So yes, I completely agree, as long as it sticks to that. And a great example is in North Carolina. They had their primary on Tuesday. They had elected, I think, 3 or 4 Democrats in 2024 to flip a seat, and all of them ended up voting primarily with Republicans this year, and made everybody crazy. They primaried every single one of them and they all lost. So that's the kind of thing that we're doing. They were in very safe areas, but no longer will we sit back and watch people in this political climate when they're in a safe seat take those kind of votes. So
great
an example of doing that.
Okay, cool. So I think I ended up deleting a question, but I remember it, and it's related to another one. But the question was, it's a really excellent question about the frequency of voter outreach contacts across the various tactics. The person's asking, how many times and different tactics do we use to contact a single voter without it becoming annoying? And then a related question is, which are the most effective of the various tactics?
Great questions. The most effective is canvassing. But canvassing just is never going to be able to reach a lot of people. So we tag team the phone banking along with the canvassing. People will get phone banked early on, and then we try to whittle that down to people that are undecided, so that when we're knocking on doors in the last few months, we're really knocking on doors of people that haven't made up their minds yet, because those conversations are incredibly effective. What's been found, and this has been studied, so this is statistically true, the most effective way to reach a voter is by multiple tactics. So they should get a postcard, they should get a knock on their door. It doesn't have to be by the same organization. we're pretty centralized here in California. Not all states are like that. Most everything here comes from our party. But you want all those tactics and you want them spread out. There's no magic number because some people can tolerate many and some don't like any at all. So there's no magic number, but we do keep trying until they tell us, yes, I'm voting for this Democrat, and yes, I have voted. And until we see that ballot cross the line, it hasn't been shown to be to turn people off. There's no evidence out there, research that it turns people off. The thing about when you talk to people, and I do a lot of phone banking, when you talk to people in the Central Valley or you talk to people in Pennsylvania, you talk to people in Michigan, they are really used to this. They know that it's their vote and their district and their state that decides the power. So they've been handling this and dealing with it for a long time, and they don't really get too annoyed. Some people actually take a lot of pride in the fact that they are the state that decides the presidency or decides control of Congress. It's not,
Yeah,
I haven't
that's
found it to
true.
be an
I
issue.
remember back in, I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2020 when we were making calls with Black Voters Matter. What state was that, Lori? Was that North
Probably
Carolina?
Georgia, maybe.
Georgia, yeah. And that people were so happy to hear from us, and I'm sure they were just being swamped.
And we don't blindly call people. We just don't take a voter list. The list that when you get an assigned voters to call, that's a curated list. They are looking for specific voters that are low frequency, that are going to be open to conversations. We do not call Republicans. In California, we don't really even call independents. We do in some other states because we have the votes here. We just have to get people to the polls. And I've been phone banking now for a month, and literally I cannot get off the phone with people. They just want to talk. They just want to talk. They're so scared and they just haven't had anybody reach out to them, and they just want their elected officials to know what's happening. They're telling me stories of how their employees have been, detained by ICE. You really hear some heartbreaking stories. We can't get off the phone with them. It's not a question of them not wanting to talk to us. It's like after 20 minutes, you're kind of ready to move on to the next caller, but they still want to talk.
Yeah. Do you anticipate text banking being used much?
That's a great question for Andy. She's our texting person. If we have it, it'll be at the end of the year. Andy, please feel free to chime in. It's extremely expensive. Most places can't do it anymore like we used to do it. Governor Newsom is an exception to that. He seems to be able to afford it, but it's pretty rare. Andy, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. I'm keeping my eye on the landscape, but I don't see a lot of texting happening right now. And the most effective texting is really for get out the vote. So if we're going to see some widespread texting opportunities, it's going to be later in the cycle.
Yeah, but one thing that I learned actually on Friday at a fundraiser for the Marin Democratic Party is that they're launching a texting program. I'm not sure if it's probably together with the California Democratic Party to outreach to youth for voter reg. And I think that's a new thing. So Andy will look into that and we'll follow that and make you guys aware of it if it's something where they're looking for volunteers. Sometimes those kinds of things are very, they have, as Lori says, expensive. So they may have a certain number of numbers.
Very expensive.
And they may not actually need that many volunteers. So
a lot of texting is being done by the campaigns themselves now because the platforms are so sophisticated where they don't need 100 volunteers to send out the text. They can just do it with a button. So it's a changing technology. I loved it. I mean, those of us that did it back in the day, it's a lot of fun, but I think it's limited in scope now.
Right. Okay. So here's a big question for you, Lori. Why don't we have a national leader yet? Any ideas?
That's such a great question. I mean, you're looking at somebody who'd be likely ready to run for president. Most people don't declare and want to assume that role because of voter fatigue. Likely by the time that election actually came around, people would be tired of you. So the real serious presidential candidates are not coming out yet. It's too early. They also don't want to distract from the midterms. It's frustrating. It's frustrating not to have a leader, but leaders kind of have to come organically over time. And we've seen different heads pop up from here to there, that have done great work. But I think as soon as the midterms are over, you're going to start seeing people coming out and either obviously running for president or actually declaring, and then we'll have that leadership. But minority parties famously don't have leaders because they're the minority. It's frustrating, but I think you'll see that starting in December, probably November 5th, you'll start seeing people popping up. And who those people are, I don't think anybody really knows yet. We all have probably an idea of a list in our head, but they don't want to distract from the primaries, and they don't want voters to be tired of them by the time we vote for president in 2028.
Very astute answer, as always, Lori. Okay, so is the League of Women Voters a real player in all this? I've thought of joining them.
Well, they're nonpartisan. So that's the first thing that you need to know. But they do a lot of work around the election and around voter registration and election security, wherever you are. It really depends on the group, but they are technically a nonpartisan organization.
Yeah. So circling back to the texting and voter reg, is there an organized effort to contact via texting those who just turned or will soon turn 18? And I'll just chime in and then turn it to Lori or Andy. I was in an event a month or two ago with Ken Martin, the DNC chair, and the DNC is launching for the first time a strong partisan voter registration campaign. You know, historically, voter reg has been handled by the nonpartisan groups like League of Women Voters. There's a very partisan group, Field Team 6. Many of you may know of Field Team 6 that have been doing partisan voter registration for years. But the party itself hasn't really gone down that road, and they are going to this year. So I find that very encouraging. I think they're piloting their program in, where is it, Lori? Arizona? I don't know if you want to add to what I said.
Yeah, I think the issue with voter registration right now is that it is happening, but people are registering as independents. The party popularity of both parties is very low. Equally, the Democratic Party is not any more popular than the Republican Party is right now. So most people that are coming into the world are registering independent. And that's why that's not so much here in California, but across the country, if you're looking at it nationally. And this is a huge challenge because once you register as independent, we've lost you, right? You're not on our list. We don't know if you're a Republican leaning independent or a Democratic leaning independent. So that's the biggest crisis. That voter registration is continuing to rise in general, but neither party is making any gains. And then how do you reach out to your voters if you don't know who they are? So it's a quandary for both sides. People are registering, but this part, what Susan was saying, that partisan registration where we only identify Democrats is very hard because most young people today, they want to register as an independent. And you can really hardly blame them, honestly. So,
Right.
And in California, you can vote in the primary as an independent, so it doesn't matter. But in some states, you can't vote in the primary unless you're registered with that party. So it's definitely a complicating factor for sure.
Yeah, so I'm aware we're approaching the hour. We have a number of questions we haven't gotten to. So for those of you that want to stay on, we'll get to every question, or pretty much every question. But if you'd like to go, thank you for coming. Thanks for your interest, your engagement, and hopefully all of the follow-up meetings and phone banks and postcarding you're going to sign up for. We will be sending out an email. It's going to be a little delayed this time because our video recording editor is away this week, but within a week, you'll have a recording, the slides, and the important links for all the meetings that Lori mentioned and ways to sign up. If you want to get going quicker on signing up for some events, just go to our website, indivisibleMarin.org, and go to our calendar page, and all the events are posted there. So you don't need to wait a week to get working. And now we'll proceed to answer some more questions. But if you'd like to go, thanks so much for coming.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
And back to some questions. I'm trying to leave all the California questions to the end, everyone, because we have some out-of-state people. What is our message as Democrats? What does our party stand for?
That's such a great question. I think they're going, and I actually heard a messaging, I'm not a messaging expert. I heard one of the leading messaging experts speak the other day, and it really surprised me because she said we need to go out with an anti-Trump message. We don't need to talk about anything that we're going to offer. The energy is so high right now, which really surprised me. I thought for sure she'd say we need our own message. But right now, in the crisis that we're in, that anti-Trump messaging is plenty. But we have to be ready like the minute we're sworn in January with what are we going to do for people and what can we do to stop this administration? So yes, there needs to be a double-edged sword. We need to have a message for stopping the abuses of the administration and what can we do to bring that cost down? Because that's the reality. And so I don't know what the message will be, but it needs to encompass both those things, or we're going to end up right where we are again right now. When you look at the Democratic Party and you look at which issues are most important, it's literally I just read a poll the other day, an excellent study. Exactly the same amount of people think cost of living is the most important, and exactly the same amount of people say that democracy issues are most important. So we're going to have to do both and figure out a way to do that. But I think we can't bring down cost of living when we're spending so much money on wars is a really great message. I think that's what you're going to find, but it's always an issue for Democrats, and it always will be. But it's a great concern. I think if we'd figured out the way to do it yet, we would have done it. But we've been struggling with it ever since I've been a Democrat. So
yeah, and I just want to make an additional comment that I think sometimes we look at the Democratic Party as the glass half empty, right? Because and I did this for a long time because my background is in communications. And it was like, why are all the Republicans, like in 24, you'd see, someone running for the House, a Republican, or the Senate on a news show, and they had the same talking points. They were just on message, all singing from the same songbook. And it might have been Lori that helped me realize, or some other wise people, that it's like, the Republicans stay on message because they're basically an authoritarian party. It comes from the top down, and there's orders from the top, and people follow them. And we're not. We're a big tent. We have differences.
And messaging at the end of the day, issues are local. So you could have one district in one state where they're very motivated by one issue, and then right next door or two districts over, they're motivated by a completely different issue. So we can't tell our candidates, you have to message on the economy, or you have to message on Trump, or you have to message on ICE. We have to trust that they're going to talk about what's going to win them an election. And so I've backed away from this national messaging thing because I've just seen it work so well when we let our candidates free to talk about whatever they feel that they need to talk about and not feel that they're dictated to by their district. But it's hard to listen to when you see, the fear that comes out of Republican messaging. I think we're kind of stuck. We have a very, very diverse party. And it's very, very hard it's hard to figure out a message that would work for everybody. But I think we can't bring prices down because we're spending too much money on wars is a really good way to do it.
Yeah. Making lives better is a good message.
But the day that we get elected, the day that we take office, we better be ready to go. I think somebody asked me the other day, well, if we can't win the Senate, what good is the House? But the House has subpoena power. So if we take over control, we've been holding hearings, but we can't subpoena anybody. All we can have is friendly voices. They will have subpoena power. They can impeach. They can start doing things that will revolve around a national power for message. But we need to get control back first before we can make good on our promises that way.
Yeah. All right. So Laura, what question's probably next since we're on California? The governor's
going to be the governor.
Yeah. Are we worried we could end up with two Republicans? Yeah. The whole deal.
I think I was just at a family event and every single member of my family asked me that the other day. At the end of the day, it's going to be fine. Yes, there's a reason to worry. Mathematically, it could absolutely happen. Nobody's going to let it happen. everyone's jockeying for position. Everybody's jockeying for a job, when this election is over. So you're going to start to see people drop off, the bottom part of the people drop off after that filing date that comes up in March. So a lot of those lower level names, and there's some really good people that are actually in that lower tier, but they're just simply not going to be able to compete for the limited amount of dollars. We'd like to coalesce around two candidates. It's likely to be Swalwell and Porter because they're the big names and they have the big money, but Steyer is in it and he's probably not going to go away. It's kind of annoying, but likely it will be those three. But some really good people are going to have to step aside. And I think that they will, because nobody wants to be responsible for California ending up with a governor, a Republican governor. The open primary is not, in my opinion, a good idea. I think we deserve to have a primary with 10 people up there and we elect the right one. And the Republicans deserve to have their primary and elect their good person. We shouldn't be getting into all of these games, but it's just the way it works. At the end of the day, it'll probably be one Democrat and one Republican, and it'll be a typical thing, but it's a lot of stress. And as far as people making a fuss about it and being scared, that's a good thing. We need to move these people along and put public pressure on them not to stay in the race any longer no longer really at this point. But they'll use that financial filing to see who the financially strongest candidates are, and then everybody else will drop off.
Great. Let's see. Someone's asking about writing postcards. They've signed up to write for Daryl Issa. What should they do?
Yeah, so anybody that had those, that was an older campaign. If you still have that, it's okay to write it. Still, you can still write that, but there's a new script available. If you go back into the portal, you can get a new script and doesn't have his name in it. That's fine. Or you can just turn the postcards over, just not write them and start with somebody else. Either way, they're going to redo that district now that the election has changed. It's a good thing that he dropped out, but it's a little hard for people that are in the middle of writing a postcard.
Yeah. And any comments about Robert Garcia's district?
I think it'll be fine. There's a lot of districts I read it's about 18 districts that have actually been redrawn that are a little bit different, but everybody should be fine at the end of the day. If you're worried that your district has changed, go ahead and go to the Secretary of State's address and it'll tell you who your new district are. Many people are in new districts for sure.
Okay, and I think we're to our last question. Probably one that doesn't have a good answer, but if Trump doesn't obey the Supreme Court rulings, i.e. tariffs, who is going to stop him? Who will make him obey the rule of law?
That's the question. I don't know.
We will if we win the House,
yeah,
right?
we will. We've never been in this situation before. How far will a Democratic Congress go, a Democratic House go? They'll impeach him. That's for sure. But if the Senate doesn't follow through, then that's sort of meaningless. It's uncharted territory. It's uncharted territory. We don't have a Department of Justice that's independent anymore. That's a great question. I don't have an answer. I don't think anybody does. But the first step is to get control back and then just see how far we can go.
Yes. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you so much for coming on this beautiful
thank you all.
First day of daylight savings time. Isn't that something to be happy about when there's so many things to be upset about? So thank you for your time. Please consider diving in voter outreach work and plug for No Kings, March 28th. Every time we've done one of these national days of protest, this will be No Kings 3. We had hands off to start. We've increased our numbers by a couple million. I think No Kings 2 was 12 million maybe. Anyway, we got to keep the numbers going up significantly with every successive, because you know what the media will do. If our numbers don't go up, they're going to say, oh, No Kings losing momentum. So show up, invite a friend wherever you are, invite a few friends. Let's make it the biggest No Kings ever. And when it's not March 28th, sign up for some phone banks and postcarding and canvassing. Thanks, everyone.